Hey YouTube, what's crack-a-lacking? So where am I? I'm in Denver, Colorado. First time here. I'm here for a week for a meeting for the week. Came out early because the flights were actually a lot cheaper to come out on the weekend, so that means I actually have a little bit of a break for the weekend. So just got in we flew from Manchester to Heathrow and then Heathrow to Denver. It was a 10.5-hour flight. I feel like I say this a lot, but the flight was terrible, really bad. Horrible old airplane, really cramped. 10 hours just absolutely killed me. But you know, I'm here now. Tomorrow I've got a bike booked. Again, another theme, you know, India, taking a bike, and then here doing a bike. We're actually heading up to the Rockies, so I'm going up, and then Andy and Mark, who's hiring a car, and they're going to drive up with me. We're going to go to a hotel to start with, which is where they filmed The Shining. Not the film, unfortunately, but the TV series, but it should still be good. And then we're going to go and see what the weather's like. The weather's not supposed to be too good, so we need to make a decision on what the weather's like, because it could be snowing, and snowing on a bike is probably not the best of ideas. But if we do get to do it, it's can't remember the name of the road, something trail. It's the highest road elevation in the US. It's 12,000 feet. Lots of switchbacks. It should be absolutely amazing. So I'm just going to head out now for some dinner, and then I'll be back.
Okay, so I decided to try something a little different for this video. Obviously, I've done some recording as we did the ride out, and to be honest with you, the weather was absolutely atrocious. If I would have been in a situation where I was just hiring the bike for the first time, then absolutely I would have not gone ahead and hired it for the morning. So Denver, given where we are and given the altitude, cloud base is a really big deal, and as you can see, you couldn't see anything. The clouds were rolled in. It was so wet and miserable. I was riding in jeans. My plan was, do the whole American things: boots, jeans, a leather jacket. And when I got there and realised that the rain was bad, I was kind of finding out if they had any oversuits I could hire, which they didn't. So I just kind of had to go with it. And it really did have a bit of an impact on the ride. About halfway through the ride is when I started to get really cold, and that obviously had an impact on what we decided to do. So we decided that we was only really going to ride out to the Stanley Hotel and then call it quits at that point. And it was a shame. I don't think I'm going to get the opportunity again to be out in Denver with a free day to actually go and ride out to the Rockies, but that's just one of those things I'm just going to have to live with. So this is the first time riding a bike out in the US, and the standard of driving over there is absolutely terrible. I think it's because there is so much space on the roads. People just don't seem to want to concentrate on what's going on around them. I mean, it's terrible to see that anybody really think anybody can get a driving license, and you can certainly see that. You can certainly see the impact that has. But we did the best as what we could. It meant I was constantly focused over the entire time. Also as well, I was following Andy and Matt. They were driving, they had the sat nav. They both don't ride, so they was just driving like you would normally drive a car. And obviously there were some major concerns that you have to think about when you're on a bike. You've not got the same level of traction. When it's wet, you have to be very much on the ball. The bike I hired was a classic Indian, beautiful bike, absolutely beautiful bike, and I've wanted to ride an American style bike like this for quite a while. I decided not to get Harley because I wanted something a little different. When I first saw it though, wow, I was very, very apprehensive. It was a big bike, but luckily the woman in the shop, she let me sit on it first, and it's so well balanced. I couldn't get over the fact that once I was on it, it was really easy. You could tell it was a big bike, and completely different than the bikes that I would normally ride, because obviously my normal bikes are like sports bikes. So yeah, it's a completely different way of riding, but very enjoyable. I had to get used to turning the handlebars, as opposed to leaning too much. I did actually manage to ground out a couple of times because I'm so used to putting my bike over on its side, and I never thought I actually did that too well. You know, I actually thought that I was a little bit of a chicken and didn't get my knee down too much, but it obviously turns out that I wasn't too much of a chicken, which is good. The ride out, as you can see, yeah, you can't see a lot, but what you could see once you got out of the city was really nice. Very, very picturesque. You can tell as you're kind of going up and into the start of the Rockies and the national park. The irony is, after we left, gorgeous all week, not a spot of rain. Just one of those things that I was really, really unlucky with the weather, and I guess that happens. So yeah, going back to the standard of driving in the US, there wasn't actually one particular moment that made me think, oh god, this is really bad. It was just more a culmination all the time. I felt more on edge in the US than I did in like India, which is really strange. You just kind of felt that at any moment you was gonna get someone was going to wipe you out. I mean, this is a great example here. I'm actually following Andy, which is the car in front of this 4x4. The 4x4 is like, you know, no, I'm not moving. I'm not going to move out of the way. I'm in this lane. I'm not going to let you pass. And it would have been pretty obvious to people that we was actually together. But, you know, it's just kind of the way it is. Obviously, videos clipped, I managed to get past the car eventually. I think if I'm right, this is the part where we start climbing up the actual hill to the Rockies. Look to the scenery on the side, absolutely gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. Just a shame we couldn't see much more. But yeah, it was still a fun ride though. It was nice. This is the first bike I've actually ridden that's got a big rain visor in front, thinking, oh great, that'll offer me some protection. It offered me absolutely none. My legs were just soaked. And it's like simple things that like at home, my visor that it's got just called a pin lock system in it, which means it's like a piece of plastic that goes in between the inside of the visor and your actual face. You can't see it, but what it does is it puts a barrier there, which is almost like double glazing. The bike helmet that I hired out there obviously didn't have that, and I was just constantly steaming up. Obviously with the fact that I'm warm and it's cold outside and there's rain on the visor as well, it just meant that my visibility was really bad. And a couple of moments, you know, I tried to lift the visor lid and wipe inside it with my glove, but it really didn't really work out. Yeah, so the car up in front, so that's Andy and Mark, and we hired the car for them so that they could obviously take the trip out as well. Yeah, there was moments when I was fantasizing about being in that car, just being outside of the cold and being outside of the wet. The ride out to the Stanley Hotel from the hotel where we was at, it's about an hour's ride, and by the end of it, I wanted off the bike. An hour's not really a long distance, and it had nothing to do with the actual bike itself. The bike was absolutely fine to ride, really comfortable, wasn't an awkward seating position, it was just the weather conditions. I'd put on some thermals underneath, a thermal top, but I didn't have anything for my bottom half, and that's what was really making me cold. What I did do though on the way back is I had a jumper, which I didn't put on because it was so warm back in the hotel in the downtown Denver. So on the way back I actually changed into the jumper to give me an extra kind of layer to deal with the weather. So the main part of the ride out was roads like this. Obviously we did have some interstate before we got here, but the most of it was this. It was mainly single road with a couple of passing places that kind of dotted up every now and then. Obviously most of the side roads that you can see that come off, they're actually going to people's houses. It's a very kind of straight road with not many kind of feeder roads that feed into it. I can imagine when the weather was better that this would be a really nice road to get a little bit of speed up. As it goes, we pretty much did the speed limit for the most of the way, which was good, which was definitely a good thing. A lot of times, and you'll see on the way back, I had to bring the speed down quite a bit, because with the inertia of the hill coming down and the weight of the bike, very difficult. Going back to the actual bike and the way that the way that it handled, so easy to ride, lots and lots of torque, big V-twin engine, so just oodles of torque. Could leave it in a high gear, it didn't have to keep dropping down the gears and over revving it. It just plodded along. Fantastic street presence as well. Whenever I parked it, loads of people came up asking me about it. It was nice. It was nice to have that whole American bike experience. It's something that I've wanted to do for quite a while, and I'm just really lucky that I got the chance to do it. I use a company called Eagle Rider. I've looked at them before in the past when I've been to places like Singapore. They have a lot of places around the world. They mainly hire American bikes, although I've noticed they've started to hire now endurance bikes like the BMW GS Adventure line. And to be honest with you, I can understand why people get the American bikes, because they are so easy to ride. So yeah, the overall experience with the Eagle Rider company was really, really good. The whole thing, the booking it online was really good. I didn't have any issues whatsoever when I was booking in, or with my driving license. That's what I was trying to say. And really friendly. Went through everything with me, had no issues with me hiring an extra jacket and so on. Lots of choice of bikes as well. There must have been about 60 Harley Davidson bikes just left outside. I think when you're trying to look for something like I did, which was the Indian, which was a little bit more unique, I think those are the ones that they have to hire in or bring into the facilities. I ended up chatting to, there was two guys there who was also hiring bikes, and they was riding on somewhere further. I can't remember where they were going to. I had a good chat with them in the morning about the whole thing. They were so anxious to get going, because with the weather closing in and they had a long ride to get under the belts, they was like, look, we need to leave. They were mentioning there was a problem with one of the bikes. I never really got to the bottom of that, but he hired, I think it was a Harley Street Glide, which was a very similar size to the one I hired. So it was interesting. It was good to talk to them. The actual route now, as you see, you can tell that we're actually starting to climb up into the mountains. You start to get the more elevation. I bet that road is gorgeous. I really do. It is such a shame that I didn't get to see a lot more of the road. Following Mark and Andy, obviously I had to follow them because they had the sat nav in the car. To be honest with you, I probably could have just not jotted down the route and made a note of it. Once you'd got out of the city, which was a bit difficult to figure out how to get out of and onto the interstate, it was a relatively straight shot up to the Stanley Hotel. Once you got onto this road especially, it was clear sailing pretty much most of the way. Going back to the actual roads, I mean, here, because it's only 2 lanes, the road surface was really nice, really smooth. On the interstates though, it's weird how they have the seams in the road, and they seem to be smack bang in the middle of the lanes, which I think for a car or a truck is perfectly fine. Obviously for a bike on 2 wheels, yeah, that's not so good. There was a couple of moments where my back tyre just got caught in it and I got a little bit of a wobble on, but that's part of riding a bike. I still love riding a bike, that complete sense of freedom that it gives you. Yes, it's dangerous, there's always a risk associated with it, but I think that's what makes it enjoyable, to be honest with you. You have to have that feeling of freedom. I think you forget when you're in a car, you've got glass all around you, you've got steel, you're in a steel cage. It doesn't make it any safer, far from it, but I think it just makes you feel a lot safer. Whereas on a bike, you feel everything. You can tell when people are there. You can tell. You can see speed. You can feel speed as well. As people are coming towards you, it's an instant feeling that you're going fast. I would have loved to have taken a little bit longer doing this ride as well, being able to stop at a few more points and get out, take pictures, do whatever. To be honest with you, at this point I was counting down the miles. I was so cold. really cold. Just looking forward to getting to the hotel and getting a coffee. And you know, there's a great picture of me. I'll see if I can find it, of me just, you know, shivering in front of the fire. They had these open fire pits at the Stanley Hotel, which was great. I could sit there in front of it, and we spent quite a bit of time there. Had something to eat, just to try and warm up. Now this road was going to be different than the trail road. We always knew that. I knew it was going to be a nice road. The trail road is apparently lots and lots of switchbacks. Here there's not that many bends and twists and turns, but the ones that there is are really nice, and you know, long sweepers. Like I said, on the way back down, yeah, there was definitely and I'll explain that once we get to the second video. I've decided I'm going to split these vlogs as well into two. What I haven't got though is I haven't got any lead in, lead out for them, so I'm going to have to record something back in the UK for it. I didn't really think of that when I was recording, that there was such a long amount of video. And you know, feedback as well of my Indian one. With my Indian ones, I just put the bike footage in there and played the music, and you know, someone pointed out the music was far too repetitive, and they would have preferred to either hear the bike engine noise or hear me talking. So I'm giving this a little go. It's the first time I've tried this. I must admit, it's interesting. It's good though to re-watch the footage. You know, a big part of me doing these vlogs is to make sure that I've got the experiences, and it's nice to be able to take my time and sit and look at the footage and just remember the ride and look at the best bits as well. I don't want to focus on the negatives. I want to look at the best bits of the ride. And yeah, when am I ever going to get this opportunity again? I'm very lucky in some respects that I do get to travel, and a lot of the times, yes, I don't get to do things like this, but those times that I managed to carve out a bit of time. The reason that we ended up going out early was actually because the cost of the flights. If you flew if I didn't fly using the weekends, the cost of the flights jumped up by about $2,000, which is a huge amount of money. Even when you factor in the hotel stay, food and drink that the company paid for, it's still a lot cheaper than the actual base cost of the flights. Yes, I would have loved to have put my bike hire on the company as well, but that wasn't really going to be an option, unfortunately. So I paid for the bike trip myself, and it worked out. I think it worked out at about £300. No, it was $300, so about £220 to hire the bike for the day, insurance, a jacket, helmet, and what else? Bike hire, insurance, and unlimited fuel. Basically, I just had to take the bike back, and they would fill it up, which was quite a bit of money. You know, I'm not going to lie, it's a lot of money, and I had to make the decision. But I've wanted to ride in America quite a lot, and I just didn't want to go over there and ride somewhere like riding down a freeway or an interstate. This is one of the places I've been that actually made sense. It was more touristy, and you know, riding out to the Rockies again. How many people can say that they've rode a bike up to the Rockies? So we're getting towards the kind of home stretch now to the Stanley. I'd probably say there's about 10 minutes left before we get there. We should obviously see the elevation will change in a little bit as well as we start going higher and higher up into the actual Rockies as well. So the Stanley Hotel is in a place called the Estes National Park, and I think that's the main park that covers that area. Beautiful place, absolutely stunning. Very, very lucky to have been there. So you know, as the ride went on, I started getting more, you know, established into the riding style with the bikes. You know, making sure that I wasn't trying to lean over too much. But as you can tell, there wasn't too many real bends that I had to try and get my knee down. There was always that underlying vein of being cold, but I did actually manage to lie back and relax. And kind of, when I said lie back, my arms were so outstretched. You just couldn't be uncomfortable on that bike. You know, I can see, like doing a coast-to-coast ride in the US, you would just eat the miles up on that bike. It was interesting because it was a newer bike than mine. You know, it had ABS, it had cruise control, it had a full kind of trip computer with all kinds of interesting things in it. Give you fuel consumption, gear position indicator. Yeah, my bike hasn't got any of them on it, and you know what? Yeah, I don't miss it. It's absolutely fine. But it is interesting, and you know, at some point maybe I might change my bike for a different bike, and you know, it's nice to do these little things like this because it lets you know what you like and what you don't like. I definitely wouldn't have one of these bikes as a main bike. I must admit though, like at traffic lights or in the town, it's got so much presence. It's so noisy. It's just everything. I suppose it's American, you know. It's big, loud, and it's brash. You know, that's pretty much an indication for what the bike was like. So yeah, a lot of people commented on it. Even when I was kind of packed up, you know, people would come over and talk to me about the bike. Hey, you know, what year is it? What's this? And I had to tell them, it's like, hey, it's not my bike. I've just hired it for the day. And you know, people was asking me questions about it, and I didn't know a lot about it. I didn't know, you know, what CC it was. It was just, this was my red bike for the day. Interesting, it had loads of like luggage, it had big saddlebags on the side, and you know, when I hired the bike, I wasn't sure what I was going to do overnight, because I thought I might have to, you know, keep it in the hotel because I didn't want to keep it on the street. But they're like, no, you can bring it back. We have a drop off. So I'm like, well, look, I've hired a helmet and a jacket. What do I do with that? And the guy's like, oh, you know, just put it in the saddlebags. That would be great, apart from the fact the saddlebags wouldn't fit the helmet in. But as it stands, because we didn't do the trail road, and we only did, you know, this part of the ride out, it meant that we was actually back early enough. We caught them just before closing time. I think we had about 20 minutes to spare. Unfortunately, the hire car we didn't catch before closing time, so we had to keep the hire car overnight. Then me and Andy the next day, we took it back in the morning, and it was nice to get up a little early, to be honest with you, and then walk back. It was a good way of starting the day. When obviously that day it was just all my ops guys who was out. Everybody else didn't really come out until the Wednesday. That was me there checking to make sure the camera was still there and painted the right way. A big part of it as well is I wanted to make sure that it wasn't full of water, because obviously it'd be no good if you couldn't actually see anything. I wasn't too impressed with where I managed to mount the camera, but there wasn't really many mounting options with the big screen there. I couldn't put it on the front of the screen. You notice at the start of the video there was a different view. So Mark actually lent me his Hero, his GoPro Hero 4, which is a really nice GoPro. It's bigger than the one I've got, and I had a chest plate on, but unfortunately, as you could tell, it was pointing. All you pretty much got was the fuel tank and the speedo, which didn't really make for a great video. So this bit's nice as we're coming down. So obviously we're now at a higher altitude, although it doesn't look it because we've done the climb up to the Rockies, and there's like a plateau bit. And here you've got a lot of the reservoirs. So this goes in between. There was actually reservoirs on both sides of this, and this is how we come into like the base of the town before we head up to the Stanley Hotel, which is coming up in a little bit. What was interesting was the road conditions. It was pretty fine to ride in. I mean, the roads were slippy and wet, but it wasn't really too much of a problem. There was a little section where there was roadworks going on. That was tricky, because when there was no tarmac down and it was just loose. Again, I had to tell Andy, look, you need to go slow through there because I'm on a bike. I can't go through the same speed you go through on a car. He didn't listen. So we ended up doing the same speed through there as we did through anywhere else. But I can understand why it's so easy in a car to just you zone out almost. You don't have to think of things the same way that you do on a bike. On a bike you have got to be focused. You've got to be looking in front of you all the time to look at the traffic situations. I mean, even at the interstates, you know, you're doing those double looks. And you know, in a car, yeah, the same thing could happen. You could still get wiped out by another car at a car, but I just think that sometimes you forget you're in that steel box. You know, you don't really have the same fear doesn't really kick in, I don't think, as you do on a bike. But all in all, it was a really nice, relaxed ride up there. Like I said, it was just over about an hour and a half it took us in the end to get up there. Just because it was so wet, but then again, I don't think it really slowed us down too much. but it was still pretty decent. Yeah, really enjoyed it on reflection. Really enjoyed it. So here we are. We're just sort of making our way into the town area now, and it's not too far away now. The Stanley Hotel. I was kind of praying for the moment to come. To be honest with you, I was ready to. You know when you just want to stop. You want a coffee. I wanted to put my jumper on. I wanted to get inside where it wasn't wet. So here's the Stanley Hotel. So what we actually did here, unbeknownst to us, is we managed to actually bypass all of the parking, the paid for parking. So this is actually where the Stanley Hotel is. There's also condominiums, so US houses, and this is actually the road to the houses that we didn't realise. So we rode up, and this is another example of following somebody that's in a car. You'll see in a minute that Andy stops on the hill, just stops. On a bike, that's a lot more difficult than it is in a car. So Andy's trying to make a decision of what to do. He makes really quick sort of U-turns and turns into the place. I decided, look, I'm not going to do what you're going to do at this point, so I actually carries on, and you'll see in a minute, I carried on and actually found some parking spaces. Unbeknownst to me, they actually belonged to the houses, not the hotel. So I actually didn't have to pay for any parking, which I thought was quite cool. So here we see, here's Andy going, all right, now I'm going to stop now because I don't know where to park. And like I said, just decides to dive in here, and I thought, well, there's no spaces, there's nowhere for us to go when we're in there, so what we're going to do, so as you can see the road up ahead, so I decided, right, that's where I'm gonna head over to the road just in front of us, and I'm not sure if there was going to be parking spaces up there or not, but I decided to take the risk, and I actually found some spaces. And I think this is probably a good enough spot as any to call it quits. I'm going to put a picture up in a minute of me freezing cold at the Stanley Hotel. And stay tuned for part 2, which is basically the ride back from the Stanley Hotel back to Denver. Alright, I'll talk to you then.